Thomas. Hello and good morning to the audience online and in presence here in Florence. Yes, as Thomas already said, I want to talk to you a little bit about my current research project, which is called Digital and Difficulty Differentiated Learning Modules in a Student Laboratory Context, a Pilot Study. I admit the title is a bit of a mouthful, but we'll try to unwrap that in a minute. So as you can see from the table of contents. There are basically three things I want to talk to you about today. First of all, we want to talk about the digital ChemLab. What is that? It's a concept for digital and difficulty differentiated learning. And second of all, I want to talk to you a little bit about the digital learning module that we created based on this concept. So as a sort of proof of concept for this digital ChemLab, we created a learning module called Household Cleaners. And we also conducted a pilot study with about roughly 65 students last summer. I want to tell you a little bit about the results and then come to a conclusion, a bit of an outlook on the main study that we're doing this summer, which will have around 200 students for all that. Okay. First of all, I want to start off with a little, not riddle, but with a quote. It says, "You cannot teach a man anything, you can only help him find within himself." Obviously, this also includes any other human being, not just man. But maybe a question for the audience, who do you think this quote is from? Maybe I can also give you a little bit of a clue. It has something to do with Florence, more or less. Yes.
Leonardo da Vinci.
Close enough.
Galileo.
Yes, it's Galileo Galilei. What has that got to do with anything? Okay, from this quote, plainly, we can derive a few things that I want to tell you about now. First of all, if you compare this to self-regulated learning, we can see that self-regulated learning, so something that comes from the learner themselves, can be a key ingredient for knowledge gain and thus learning outcome. If we want to combine this self-regulated learning with modern technologies, we can see that digital media offers great potential for self-regulated learning. And then we can ask ourselves a question: how can we organically integrate digital media into science teaching context while also promoting self-regulated learning tools? That's basically the question we asked ourselves in Jena at our work group. And what we came up with is a concept for a student laboratory that can also integrate digital media, but also promotes self-regulated learning, that is called Digital ChemLab. And that's what I want to tell you a little bit more now. So what is the Digital ChemLab? Basically, what you can see from this graphic here is I've shown you how a student lab day works. So a student lab, I don't know if everybody is familiar with that, means basically that one or two classes from different schools from our county in Turingia come to us. And these students conduct experiments and do exercises, and this sort of visit is prepared in schools before and after they come to us. So what we did is we took a familiar concept and basically, sort of advanced it a little bit more by adding visual media to it. So as you can see, what we start with is like a 50-minute introduction that gives them like a proper welcome, and then we also do a technical methodical introduction. That basically means we give them iPads. And on these iPads, they have an ebook that leads them through the learning module, and we tell them a little bit about how the iPad works, how the ebook works, so that they can just start and then go about their day. This is the main part, obviously, the experimentation or experimenting and exercising phase. So as you can see from the sort of golden bricks there, we have experiments that they can do in partnership or group work. We have exercises in individual or partnership work. And while they do this, or after they do this, they can compare the results with prepared solutions. And while they do this, they also document their learning progress. So we can see at any time which tasks are they currently working on, how long does it take, and in which order do they go about doing that. The sort of grayish bricks that you can see here are the digital media elements that we introduced into our student lab that weren't there before. So we have learning videos, we have interactive exercises, we have quizzes, we have information help buttons, and that's all integrated into the ebook via different links that they can follow. The last part, obviously, is pretty much self-explanatory. It's discussion and feedback. So what we do here is we ask if there are any remaining questions. We discuss some results if needed, or if there are any questions about them. And also we have a lot of time to basically give feedback about the day and sort of evaluate how this new concept is working, if it's working. So, so far, this was only theory, and to actually prove that theory or that concept, we created a digital learning module on the topic of household cleaners. And that's what I'm going to tell you a little bit more about now. So you can see here the basic structure of the digital learning module for this concept that I just shown you. And as you can see, the module is has basically three parts or subtopics, which are in blue, green, and gold. And as you can see, the topic complexity that we have of these subtopics increases from left to right. So on the left, you sort of have more of a contextual introduction into the subject or to the topic. So it's called classification and ingredients of household cleaners. Then we go a little bit more into depth about the chemistry that stands behind the household cleaners. That's why we chose the topic. It's a contextual topic that you can see in everyday life, which is also important in schools. And it has a very important basic concept of chemistry behind it. It's the acid-base chemistry. So as you can see, B is sort of the appliance of the acid-base chemistry on the household cleaners, and C is the acid-base chemistry made easy, so it's more of an abstract concept. We're doing experiments also, but we're also explaining the chemistry behind the experiment and behind the topic. So as I said, from left to right, the topic complexity increases. We also have, on the other hand, and that's how the module is arranged, the cognitive complexity that increases. So on the basic level, you have knowledge, which is basically just knowledge that they have from school, which is more of a repetition or sort of bringing everybody to the same level. After that, we start with an understanding. So it's already starting to apply the knowledge on a minor level, and then we have the actual applying, which is then having the concepts, using them, and trying to figure out what happens there. The most difficult task then is analyzing, creating, and as you can see, this is sort of like the Bloom taxonomy or the revised Bloom taxonomy. So we have an increase in cognitive complexity from low to up, and then from left to right. Yes. So apart from the digital aspect that I just explained to you, this is the difficulty differentiated aspect, or also the self-regulation aspect, right? So we give this learning module with this as a sort of table of contents where they can click on and choose their task to every student that comes to our lab. They have the iPad in their hands, and then they can choose which task or which field they want to do. And we tell them you should do at least 4 tasks when you finish the day. Yeah. And basically that's what we did. We gave them the learning module, we created it, and then we checked what was going to happen. So in order to do so, we first tested the module with our experts. That means basically members of our work group, but also higher level university students. We did some, we worked out some kinks and changed a few things. And then in June, July last year, we had 3 classes coming from the 8th grade to 65 students. The evaluation design was a pre-test intervention post-test design. So we had a pre-test, then we did the learning module with them on the student lab days I've just shown to you. And then we did a post-test. And after the post-test, we let 2 months pass, and then we had a follow-up questionnaire after the summer holidays, basically. Furthermore, we did some student interviews during the day and then questionnaires for each field. What we were trying to inquire was, first of all, the knowledge. So was there like a knowledge gain in the students, the interest, the learning emotions, the evaluation, and the usage of the digital learning module household cleaners? Basically comes down to 3 questions that I just want to show you. How does the execution of the digital learning module household cleaners influence knowledge? That's on the one hand acid-base chemistry, so just explained, and also household cleaners. How does it influence interest? That's either the subject interest of chemistry in general or the topic interest into household cleaners. And then we have learning emotions of the participants. We also asked ourselves, how do the participants rate the digital learning module, especially the usage of digital media? And third, and last of all, how do the participants use the digital learning module? Choice of tasks, usage of provided experience. Okay. So that's it. That's the basic concept of the questions we asked ourselves. So everything we did before the study to prepare it. And now in the second part, I'm going to show you a few of the results that we yielded from last year's pilot study. So first of all, as you can see here, this is the development of knowledge. We have 2 different knowledges that we sort of inquired, which is first of all, the acids and bases. So that's the more broad concept of acids and bases in the 8th grade. And we also have knowledge specifically on household cleaning. And as you can see, the knowledge about acids and bases and concerning household cleaners increased significantly after the intervention and remains higher than before the intervention after 2 months. So actually, we see effects here that the intervention had some lasting effects. Obviously, you can also say it's a very common topic in schools, right? So it was nothing that they forgot about and then never did again. It was probably something that they did in school afterwards as well. So that obviously helps with the containment of the knowledge. If we look at the interests, the results were, well, a little bit disappointing, if you can say so. The topic interest increases slightly, but not significantly. So that's the topic interest for studying household cleaners. And decreases after 2 months. The subject interest largely remains the same. So concerning the subject interest, that was to be expected, right? It's a concept, and what literature tells us, or current research tells us, is it's something that is very difficult to change, especially by just intervention that is like 2 hours. With the topic interest, it's a little bit different. Maybe it's a topic household cleaners, not everybody maybe liked it. But anyway, you can see no major effects checking the interest of the students. The last thing for question 1 here is the development of learning emotions. So basically what we did is we asked them, what do you expect of the day? Do you think it's going to be fun? Do you think it's going to make you more curious about it? Do you think it's going to frustrate you? And what we can see here is that actually the expectations were, surpassed basically after the intervention. So what you can see is, especially the negative emotions, curiosity, frustration, confusion, and boredom, so the lower ones, they all go down significantly while the fun increases. So they have more fun than they anticipated, and it was less boring, less frustrating, less confusing than they expected. Interesting enough, the curiosity also goes down. We have no idea why that is. Maybe it was just too interesting and there was too much stuff, and after that, like, I can know more, I'm not curious anymore about anything. But, well, we can't really say what was going on there. But to conclude that part, basically, negative emotions decreased, positive emotions increased. So that's good news for a learning module, especially also combined with the development of knowledge that was also influenced in a positive way. All right, question 2 basically asks about how the learning module was evaluated. So what we did, we had quantitative items. We just asked the students, how do you rate the learning module, the usage of iPads, and the differentiation matrix? The differentiation matrix is what I've shown you, this table of contents, basically, what I just told you. And we also asked them about difficulty and duration. And what you can see here is that it basically was evaluated very highly. So the learning module and the usage of iPads and differentiation matrix are all in the 4 to 5 area. This is a 5-point Likert scaler. So yeah, obviously this is good news. So that means they actually really like the module. The graphs or the lines that you can see is a bit of statistics gone wrong. I'm sorry. What I wanted to show you is the standard deviation. What it just shows you is what was the highest and what was the lowest answer. This was not what I intended to put on the graph, but yeah, anyway, that's why it looks a bit wonky. The difficulty and duration are around 3, and what that means is we didn't ask them, did you like the difficulty or did you like the duration? What we asked them is the difficulty just right, or is the duration of the model just right? So we were expecting something around 3, and it's a little bit higher than that. So in put it in context, that means the learning module was a little bit more difficult than expected, and a little bit longer than just right, but still in a very good margin. We also asked 2 qualitative questions that we can see here. What did you like about most of the learning module? And as you can see, this was mainly the iPads actually, or just working digitally, which were 25 answers, come up to 38%, and then obviously the experiments. So this is obviously something that really hooks the students. Using the iPads, also using the experiments, so this sort of hybrid between experiments and iPads seems to be working quite well. Just a few didn't answer anything. We can see the other way around when we ask the question, what can be improved about the learning module? And as you can see, more than 40 students here just didn't tell us anything. That's 66%. The rest had technical aspects or content aspects. What meant here is technical aspects is mainly we try to sort of see when they are where, and they had to click the button when they finish their task. but some of them just forgot about it. So sometimes you just had fields that they took 60 minutes, and then they are like, no, that's not true. It only took us like 30 minutes. And yeah, some of them were really not very happy about that. So we have to sort of work that out the next time we do the project. And the content aspects basically concern something that they want. It's something that with solving the task. Overall, the learning module in its current state is rated very highly. Specifically, the students appreciate the usage drive as a production of experiments. Already coming down to an average of 4 to 12 tasks in average, so that was something we aimed for. It could have been more. Some of the groups took a little bit more of a break than we expected. So yeah, but 4 to 12 tasks is okay because that's what we set as the bare minimum. What we can see, which is very interesting, is that the usage of the A to C task decreases, and also of the level 1 to level 4 tasks. What that translates to is the students choose easier tasks. That may be a bit of an underwhelming statement, but it definitely means that, at least from what we are telling us, that had an influence on their choice of tasks. That means when they know that these tasks are more easier, or they comprehend that they are easier, they want to do them more often than the other ones. When we look at the provided material that we gave them, that is something that I've shown you in the table of the student lab day. We can see that there was material that was frequently used, which also makes sense. Is the experiments, the exercises, the video, and the interactive exercises. So all of these were used quite frequently. What wasn't used that regularly were actually the solutions and the help buttons. So I think solutions, sometimes they just don't think about it. They just don't realize, oh yeah, I can check my results with something that is already there. With the help buttons, they only use them for very difficult tasks. So they don't probably just need it for something where, I'm a little bit in need of help, actually. Rarely used were quizzes and information buttons. So these are some things that we maybe won't include when we rewrote the learning module. So to sort of come to the end of that, what was interesting as well is we also asked them about the perceived difficulty and perceived effort. So we asked them after each task, how difficult did you find it? And how much effort did you need to put into it? And what we can see actually is the perceived difficulty and the perceived effort of the task match with our intended difficulty and effort. So we wanted, obviously, the C task to be more difficult than the B or A task, and also the level 1 task to be easier than the level 3 or 4 tasks. What we can see, unfortunately, as well, is though that the level 4 tasks don't quite match with the rest of the tasks. So level 4 is not very constant in their higher level of complexity, so we have to rework that a little. Okay, these are a lot of details just to conclude that the intended levels of complexity match mostly with the choice of task, the perceived difficulty and the perceived effort, thus easier tasks are being preferred. Okay, so this was a lot coming from our digital chem lab concept to the digital learning module, to the test of the digital learning and the results. So I want to conclude that a little bit and give you a bit of an outlook of what we are planning to do next. So the 3 questions are mainly answered that way. The digital learning module, household cleaners, shows significant effects on the knowledge and emotional experience of the students. So an increase in positive, decrease of negative emotions. The learning module in general, specifically the experiments and the use of digital media, were rated highly. Difficulty and duration were perceived as appropriate. And the number of 4 to 12 tasks were completed on average. So the intended levels of complexity match with the perceived levels of effort and difficulty, and also influence the choice of tasks. Yeah. So that's what we found out so far with the 65 students that we conducted the learning module with. So overall, this is good news for the current way the learning module is conducted. What we didn't look at quite as well in the pilot study is how this choice of tasks work. So the self-regulation part is something that we are very interested in, because the digital part we already answered basically. They like it, it works, so we can go about let them go about doing that, and now check the self-regulation, how the choice of tasks works. So the question here is the choice of open questions remain concerning the choice of tasks and its depending on certain individual traits, plus the identification of possible typical learning pathways or outcomes. You can see the revised questions here. We're basically just going to ask the same questions at the beginning to confirm the results with a larger group. And then we ask which task that you would choose depending on the individual background and other typical learning pathways. So what influences their choice of these fields? Is there any influence? Is it random? Or why do they do it the way they do? And we hope that we can find something there which helps us with the construction of new learning modules in the basic way the whole student update is conducted. Small outlook, there will be a main study in April. There's pre-study with 50 students, and then June to July, 13 classes come to us with 300 students. So we can check how the learning runs. These are my sources and some suggestions for further reading. I thank you for listening, and I'm now open to any